Let's be honest, sleep is supposed to be a safe space, a warm, cozy cocoon where you can dream about winning the lottery, flying through the clouds, or finally telling your boss what you think of them. But in the world of A Nightmare on Elm Street, sleep is a death trap, and your dreams, well, they're Freddy's playground. Stay tuned for my ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Stick around. Yeah. What's going on, fellow insomniacs? Welcome back to my channel, a tiny little spot in the smallest corner of YouTube I like to call the Movie Den. I'm Scott, and today I'm bringing you my ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, including the epic showdown with Jason Voorhees and the 2010 remake. Freddy Kruger is my introduction to the horror icons. I saw Nightmare on Elm Street before I ever saw Friday the 13th or Halloween. There was just something about him that made him stand out from the rest. While Jason and Michael had their own approach to Silent Menace, Freddy had something that instantly hooked me: charisma. He wasn't just some silent stalker. He didn't just show up to kill. He did it with style, a snarky quip, and a gleeful love for the chaos that he was causing. He showed up and he enjoyed what he was doing. He invaded our minds, our dreams, and for some of us, our inability to sleep. There's a certain twisted genius about the idea that no matter how hard you try, you have to fall asleep eventually, and that's when Freddy's going to get you. At the bottom of the list, at number 9, we have the 2010 remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I'm going to start by acknowledging the weight on the shoulders of any remake attempting to step into the legacy of such an iconic film like Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. That film was a groundbreaking masterpiece that created such a remarkable horror villain. Unfortunately, the 2010 remake does not capture any of this magic. Instead, it delivers a lifeless, uninspired rehash that misses the soul of what made the original so enduring. One of my biggest issues with the remake is its over-reliance on the use of CGI to generate its nightmares. While the original Elm Street used practical effects and set design to create unsettling dreamscapes, the remake's use of CGI for the dream sequences come off as hollow and unimaginative, which was a huge letdown to me. It was really distracting, and I went in really wanting that shit to scare me, and it just didn't. What made the 1984 film so chilling was that the nightmares felt tangible, but here the over-polished artificial feel of the dreams and the visuals takes away any sense of danger. It just didn't pull me in. Casting Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger seemed like an interesting choice. I like him, and I think he's a damn fine actor. He does a good job as a character, but I think he never truly owns the Freddy role like Robert Englund did. I get that they were trying to go for something different, a different approach, but Haley's Freddy just is stripped of the dark humor. It's what made Englund's portrayal and the character so memorable. Instead, we get a grim, one-note version of the character who's more of a generic boogeyman than a sinister dream demon, like I've come to know and fear. Haley's Freddy is menacing, sure, but he just lacks personality. One of Freddy Krueger's greatest strengths as a horror icon was his charisma and his twisted sense of enjoyment that he took in tormenting his victims. Here, Freddy is reduced to a shadow of his former self, with very few memorable lines and almost no scares. The enjoyment of the kills is gone. The film's decision to portray him as a more overly tragic figure, leaning into his backstory as a child molester, it simply makes him feel smaller and more human. Freddy should be larger than life, and this version feels like a pale imitation. It suffers heavily from poor writing and character development. The teenagers at the center of the story, they're forgettable and dull. which is a major flaw when the horror relies on us caring about who lives and who dies. And Rooney Mara, who plays Nancy, just seems so disinterested in the role. She delivers a wooden performance and lacks the vulnerability and strength that Heather Langenkamp brought to the original Nancy. The rest of the cast, while serviceable, they just failed to really make any impact with me. The film attempted to modernize the story, I guess, but instead it lost its identity along the way. The original Elm Street had a sense of dread and built steadily as the teens were picked off one by one with a real emotional investment in their fates. This one relies too much on jump scares and gore without any real tension building. It feels more like a generic slasher than the psychological nightmare it needed to be. A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, is one of the most forgettable and uninspired entries in the series. First off, the concept of a child playing a central role in a Freddy film feels like it could have worked, I guess, but in the end, the execution here is messy and pretty dumb. The story follows Alice, played by Lisa Wilcox, returning from Nightmare 4, The Dream Master, who is now pregnant and somehow tied to Freddy's resurgence through her unborn son's dreams. On paper, it's a unique twist exploring new territory for dream sequences, but the result feels convoluted and poorly realized. What makes The Dream Child so frustrating is how it takes the rich lore and creativity of the earlier films and waters them down. The idea of Freddy haunting the dreams of an unborn child has potential, but the way it's presented is fucking stupid. There's a noticeable lack of tension, and the dream sequences really just fall flat. They feel uninspired and lack the kind of impact that made Freddy so terrifying. Where are the haunted landscapes? The inventive kills? Instead, we get a strange blend of gothic-inspired imagery, and the kills feel more gimmicky. The Dream Child marks a significant downturn for Freddy. Robert Englund's portrayal is still solid, but the script forces him into a full-blown parody of himself. Freddy's sharp, dark humor is replaced with eye-roll-worthy one-liners, and it really robs him of his menace. The film also leans too heavily on the backstory, especially with the focus on Amanda Kruger, who's Freddy's mother, and the whole demonic conception storyline. Instead of adding depth to Freddy, it makes the mythology feel a little bloated and overcomplicated. Alice is a likable enough protagonist here, but she lacks the strength and focus that she had in The Dream Master. She feels more passive, with much of the films revolving around her pregnancy and Freddy's convoluted plan to use her child as a new vessel. The supporting characters are forgettable at best and gives you little to invest in emotionally. Dan, Alice's love interest, is tragically underutilized, while the rest of the new characters never quite rise above the one-dimensional stereotypes that they are. By the time Freddy starts picking them off, it's really hard to care. Instead of the nightmarish claustrophobic atmosphere that earlier films like The Dream Warriors mastered, The Dream Child opts for visuals that feel more bizarre than scary. Freddy's world is supposed to terrify and disorient you, but here it feels more nonsensical and cartoonish. It's a forgettable chapter in the franchise, and as a fan, this one always left me wanting more. At number 7, Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare promised an explosive and fitting conclusion to Freddy Krueger's saga, but instead it delivered a film that was a bit of a misfire to me. While it's certainly a step up from the convoluted mess that was A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, it still struggles to capture the terror and creativity that made the earlier entries in the franchise so iconic. The most glaring issue with Freddy's Dead is its over-reliance on the 3D gimmick. Sure, it might have been fun and all that in the audience and the theaters, but at home without glasses, it just doesn't work as well as it did then. The 3D sequences are forced, and they distract from what should have been a more intense and climactic battle with Freddy and his final victims. The film also takes an odd turn by veering into slapstick territory. Freddy has now become a character of himself. His one-liners and comedic antics are turned up a little bit here, but they make him more of a cartoonish villain than the fearsome boogeyman that we've known and loved. While some of you may enjoy this version of Freddy, I think it robs the character of the sinister edge that truly makes him terrifying. The film attempts to explore Freddy's backstory, giving us glimpses into his past, but even this feels shallow and rushed. Freddy's Dead does have some redeeming qualities, though. The concept of exploring the last remaining child of Springwood is interesting, and it gives the film a bit of weight, as we see how Freddy's reign of terror has decimated this town. And there's also a sense of finality here, in theory at least, as the title promises the end of Freddy's story. But we all know how that turned out, right? While A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master has its moments of fun and entertainment, it doesn't quite live up to the earlier entries in the franchise, the first three films. Directed by Rennie Harlan, this installment follows up on the events of Dream Warriors and marks a shift towards a more stylized and action-packed Freddy Krueger, which, while entertaining, sometimes loses sight of the darker, more menacing Freddy. Harlan definitely knows how to craft visually stunning and imaginative moments. While the kills are inventive, they just often feel like they're more of a spectacle for spectacle's sake. Freddy Krueger leans more heavily into the humor here, turning the once nightmarish character into a quip-spouting trickster. And for fans who enjoy the more playful Freddy, this shift is fun. Freddy's jokes sometimes undercut the horror, making him more of an entertaining than a true villain in the shadows. The movie's pacing, while mostly energetic, occasionally falters. Some scenes feel rushed, especially in the development of new characters like Alice, played here by Lisa Wilcox, and eventually becomes the Dream Master. Alice's arc is interesting, but her development feels somewhat overshadowed by the spectacle of Freddy's antics. In terms of continuity, the Dream Master tries to carry the torch from Nightmare 3, but its connection to the previous film feels tenuous at best. The sudden and quick dispatching of fan-favorite characters from Dream Wars, particularly Kincaid and Joey, feels like a wasted opportunity. These deaths come too early, too abruptly, and without the dramatic weight they deserve, which makes it harder to stay emotionally invested in the survivors. That said, Nightmare on Elm Street 4 is still fun. I had fun with it. The energy, visual flair, the soundtrack give it a distinct late 80s vibe that can be nostalgic and enjoyable to watch. Freddy, even in his most comic form, is entertaining, and some of the death sequences are memorable. At number 5 on my list is the epic showdown between Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. Now, when Freddy vs. Jason was announced, it felt like a dream come true for horror fans, and myself included. Two of the most iconic figures in slasher history are about to duke it out and go head-to-head in a showdown that had been long in anticipation. The build-up was electric, trailers teased epic battles, and fans eagerly speculated about who would come out on top. Jason's better than Freddy, Freddy's better than Jason, you know. Would it be the razor-gloved Master of Nightmares Freddy, or would it be the hulking, machete-wielding of Jason Voorhees? The very idea of these two legends clashing with each other was enough for me to turn off my brain and have a little bit of fun. Unfortunately, while the film delivers on some of the spectacle we were promised, it ultimately fell short in areas that mattered the most. The premise is strong. Freddy, seeking to reclaim his power, resurrects Jason from his slumber to instill fear in the residents of Springwood. However, the execution feels a bit disjointed. The film spends a surprising amount of development on a group of forgettable characters whose arcs feel rushed and underdeveloped anyways. While the human elements are often crucial in horror, in this case it detracts from what I really wanted, the iconic battle between Freddy and Jason. When the two finally do meet in battle, though, it is undeniably fun. It's well choreographed in their confrontations. combining horror and dark humor in a way that feels true to both of the characters. Freddy's trademark wit is on full display with his quips, often eliciting a little bit of laughter from me, while Jason's brutal efficiency contrasts sharply with Freddy's sadistic pleasure and torment in his victims. The dream sequences where Freddy reigns supreme are some of the film's highlights. However entertaining as these confrontations are, they also highlight the film's shortcomings. The script tends to lean heavily on cliches, and the dialogue can be a little bit cringeworthy. The balance between horror and humor sometimes feels a little bit uneven. The pacing suffers in the first two acts, dragging quite a bit before the climactic final showdown. It feels as if the film was more focused on setting up a sequel than to really delivering a conclusive battle between these two titans of horror. It is a fun watch, especially if you're a fan of the Elm Street and Friday the 13th films. It captures the essence of the franchise's crossover concept, and it's impossible not to enjoy the chaotic energy when Freddy and Jason finally do collide. There's an undeniable thrill in watching them duke it out on screen, and the over-the-top nature of their rivalry offers a entertaining experience for fans, and I know I was entertained. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge might polarize diehard fans of the series. I know it was a bit polarizing for me when I first watched it. While it's not without its flaws, I do solidly rank it at number 4 amongst the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Fred is reimagined here as a manipulative force invading the waking world through Jesse Walsh, played by Mark Patton, who's a teenager grappling with his own identity. Patton's performance does capture Jesse's struggle with his fear and confusion pretty well. Director Jack Shoulder employs some striking imagery and inventive set pieces that remain memorable. The film's use of dream sequences is also effective, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare in a way that keeps you on the edge. So while I understand why many fans might place it lower on this list, I believe that it deserves more appreciation than it really gets. That's why I keep it solid at number 4 on my list. All right, down into the top 3. At number 3 is Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and this is a brilliant return to form for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and a film that delivers a fresh and intelligent take on the horror icon. After a series of sequels that took Freddy in a more campy and comedic direction, this film brings him back to his more terrifying roots, but with an intriguing meta twist that feels years ahead of its time. I thought the premise of Freddy crossing over from the film world and into our own was a clever take and a brilliant idea. This shift transforms Freddy from a character we watch on the screen to something more dangerous and unpredictable. Heather Langenkamp returns as herself, playing a version of her real-life self, and it gives the story a more personal touch as we watch her deal with the nightmare she thought she had left behind when her role as Nancy had ended. The film takes its time developing her character, showing the pressures of balance in family life and the strange occurrences that seems to be related to Freddy's resurgence. Langenkamp delivers a strong performance as she battles this more sinister version of Freddy. Gone are the cheesy one-liners that had become synonymous with the character by the late 80s. Instead, we get a more menacing and far more primal Freddy. Wes Craven also inserts himself into the story, adding to the film's metatextual commentary on the nature of horror and storytelling. The film asks some thought-provoking questions like, what happens when the stories we create take on a life of their own? Craven uses this medium itself to create a sense of unease, and it makes a New Nightmare not just another slasher film in this franchise, but a reflection on the power of horror in films. Wes Craven's New Nightmare is not just a great nightmare film, but a smart, well-crafted horror film that holds up incredibly well today. It feels like a love letter to the fans of this franchise while also offering something completely new and inventive. New Nightmare is a daring concept, and it's effective in its execution. When it comes to A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, it is easily the most entertainment installment of the franchise for me. Set in a psychiatric hospital, Dream Warriors introduces us to a group of troubled teens who, like the survivors of the previous film, are plagued by Freddy in their dreams. Now, what I liked about this one is the shift from passive victims to empowered fighters. These teens don't just run and scream, they band together, tap into their inner strengths through their dream personas, and take the fight directly to Freddy. This concept of the Dream Warriors having unique abilities in their nightmares is a stroke of genius and adds a whole new dynamic to the dreamscape where Freddy had previously reigned unchallenged. Nightmare 3 delivers some of the most iconic moments from the franchise, from the unforgettable "Welcome to Prime Time, bitch" to Freddy returning as a giant snake head like creature. Each dream and set piece feels fresh, imaginative, and it taps into the surreal possibilities of the dream world while maintaining a visceral sense of danger. Freddy Kruger himself is at his best here and still terrifying, but with the perfect dose of dark humor. This film is where Freddy's personality truly blossoms. He is no longer just a silent killer from the first two films, but a more malevolent force that enjoys toying with his prey. His quips and one-liners become as iconic as his kills. It was a smart choice to bring back Heather Langenkamp as Nancy. She comes to work at the hospital as a mentor to these young kids, and the bond between Nancy and these teens grounds the film into something real and relatable. Patricia Arquette in her breakout role as Kristen is fantastic. Arquette brings vulnerability and strength to Kristen, making her one of the franchise's most memorable final girls. The ensemble cast works well together, and their camaraderie adds to the emotional stakes. The special effects team pulls off some of the most creative and grotesque visuals in the series, whether it's the puppeteer scene with the veins being used as strings to Freddy's face emerging on the TV. The effects feel tangible and impactful even today. The film also benefits from a killer soundtrack, with the title song by Dokken adding a metal edge that perfectly complements the rebellious spirit of the Dream Warriors. It's a near-perfect sequel that captures everything I love about this franchise: Freddy's twisted humor, inventive dreamscapes, and a group of characters that I generally care about. It's the one I watch the most. It's not just because it's a great Freddy film, but it's because it's bold, creative, and endlessly entertaining. There's something timeless about fear of the unknown, but in A Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven gave us something even more terrifying: fear of the unavoidable. This film is not just a slasher film, it's a surreal dive into the power of the mind and the helplessness we feel when we're asleep. For my money, it absolutely deserves its place as a classic and number one on my list today. From the opening scenes, we're thrust into the foggy world of alleyways, screeching metals, and it's here that we're introduced to Freddy Kruger, who's played to nightmarish perfection by Robert Englund. Freddy isn't just your typical masked mute killer. He's a sadistic figure who thrives on fear, taking pleasure in his victim's terror. His burned face, trademark fedora, and his razor-fingered glove are instantly iconic. But what sets him apart is his personality. Freddy talks, he taunts, he plays with his prey in ways that make him more unnerving than the silent stalkers of the era. He isn't just haunting you, he's enjoying the hunt. The concept behind A Nightmare on Elm Street is what truly elevates it. The idea that Freddy can only attack you in your dreams is brilliant because sleep is inevitable. There's no escape no matter how hard you try. We follow Nancy Thompson, who's played brilliantly by Heather Langenkamp, as she tries to understand why her friends are dying in their sleep. The more she uncovers about Freddy's backstory, a vengeful child murderer killed by the parents of Springwood, the more we realize that it's a battle against the sins of the past, a generational curse that refuses to die. The dream sequences are inventive and frightening moments. They defy the logic of the waking world. They play on our most primal fears. Freddy appears where he shouldn't be, through walls and bathtubs and in front of staircases that suddenly feel like quicksand. Craven's ability to seamlessly move between the wake and in-dream world is masterful. It creates a sense of disorientation and tension. Nightmare on Elm Street delivers plenty of gores and thrills. It's also deeper than it appears. Freddy isn't just a killer, he's a manifestation of the darkest parts of the human psyche. Nancy's journey is more than just about survival. It's about confronting the horrors that previous generations had left behind. Wes Craven tapped into something far more existential. Freddy Krueger isn't just coming for you. He's not coming after these teens for no reason. He's a specter of the past, a force that challenges our understanding of reality. All right, horror fans, that wraps up my ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, but here's where I need you. This list is based on my personal experience with Freddy, but I want to hear from you guys. How do you rank the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise? Do you agree with my top 10, or do you think I let a few sleep demons slip by? Drop down in the comments below with your rankings. Let's get the debate going. Let me know what you guys think. And if you've enjoyed today's video, hit that like button, share it with your fellow horror fans. And don't forget to subscribe to the Movie Den so you never miss a future video. We've got a lot more horror content coming your way this horror season. So hit that notification bell to be notified. Again, I'm Scott. Thanks for tuning into the channel. And remember, you have to sleep sometime. See you on the next one. Yeah.